Hello guys, and welcome to the state of the game, or at least my reaction to it. So obviously I'm not going to be going through it every single part of it. I'm just going to be going over the main points. If you do want to read the full thing, do check out the description down below. It will have the link there. So obviously when it comes down to it, we're just going to kind of go over the main things that they talked about, as well as my reaction to it, and then overall I'll give my thoughts at the end, just so that we can kind of have a better understanding of what's going on and how everything can be organized into this type of situation. So the first thing that they did talk about is addressing the feedback that they have been receiving, as well as focusing on the ritual updates. That is the first aspect that they did want to focus on. If you are a Crucible player, you're going to be very happy with this, primarily because one, it is going to be more focused on with a new map. They're doing multiple game modes. They're getting a new competitive division being relaunched, a revamp of Trials of Osiris, as well as adding in new rewards for both competitive and trials, which is really nice and really great when it comes down to it. The map itself is more of like a Mars mixed with Neo Noir, Neo Luna. Now the one thing is that they are going to be showing off the map within the showcase, so do watch that. If you are not planning on it, do watch it. It's a good idea. Now, that being said, they're also adding in a couple of other choices. We're having two new game modes. One is Checkmate, which is primarily focused on the gunfights rather than utilizing the abilities, as they are reducing the time up, or they're increasing the cooldown, more like it, for the abilities. So you would have to actually be more focused on the gunfight positioning, and that's something that I actually really liked. I'm glad that they're doing something like this. I wanted to have this for a little bit now at this point, just because one, I think the gunplay within D2 is fairly good, and I think there needs something to really show that off, and I think this is a really good spot for that. Now obviously on the opposite end, for Crazy Party Happy Games, we got Relic. So that's going to essentially be you utilizing the different relics that have been introduced into the game, like the Aegis from Vault of Glass, an Epic Spear from Season of Risen, Scythe from Haunted, and so each one will have their own kind of impact, and you need to use the relic to earn points. I think this is great. I think this is a very fun idea, and I really want to see this go through and actually kind of work through that, because again, when it comes to it, a lot of the party game modes that Bungie has is always fun, and I love them, especially since, you know, it is something that takes it away from what you normally are dealing with, which is just, you know, either a random shotgun aping going on, or just, you know, someone using stompies to fly above everybody just because they can jump higher. But I think the good thing is that it will be more of a kind of, you know, twist on the whole Team Scorch thing, which I think is really nice. Now, obviously, they are going to be working on the matchmaking improvements as well. That is something that they're trying to get fixed as well. They're going to remove the freelance node when it comes to it, which is a somewhat negative option. But again, they are adding in a new loose matchmaking for fire teams, including the labs, to make sure that they are evenly matched against similar fire team sizes. And one thing is that they'll be tackling the issue with balancing during those times as well, which obviously, again, it's something that they do need to work on, but it is something that obviously is going to take some time before we can really get anything out of it. So overall, if you are a Crucible player, you are gaining a lot of good stuff when it comes down to it, especially since the overall ritual activities are going to be changed from having you do each part of it, like Crucible, Vanguard, and Gambit, 3 times each. Instead, it will be 9 times overall, so you can play primarily Crucible, check out the stuff in there, and not have to worry about the others. Now, this is possibly the only positive thing to come out of this in terms of these 3 aspects. The second part is obviously the Vanguard ops. So Vanguard's already in a solid place that they believe, and I honestly can't deny that. I mean, it is their main bread and butter when it comes to the ritual activities, Nightfall strikes, as well as the battlegrounds that they've been adding in. Now, they are looking to add in some new additions, but the first thing that they decided to highlight is Vanguard medals. Now, if you haven't played Guardian games, this is going to be something new for you. But if you have played Guardian games, you are going to already know what's going to happen. Essentially, these are going to be utilized to help earn more points, but they're going to be more focused on skills rather than doing unique things to kind of avoid those situations where, you know, you have to do an emo before you finish a champion or something of that sort. So it's going to be something like that, where it's just like, oh, hey, you're going to get some benefits for it. But ultimately, the way that I'm seeing this is that this is just, this is more recycling by Bungie when it comes down to it. Because as much as it can be very entertaining for the whole, oh yeah, we are able to go through and give you this new item. The problem is that the only time that points do matter is if you're doing the pinnacle grind. And that's because, hey, yeah, you need to get X amount of points to get this reward. That's something that's happened. And honestly, personally, I don't think that's even worth happening when it comes to that stuff. Now, obviously, they did mention that they are adding in some additional things. Like, for example, they're going to be adding in some other options when it comes to the Battlegrounds to be part of the Vanguard Ops playlist, which again, it's great if you haven't played them before, but if you have, then, you know, you already kind of know what to expect when it comes to that. So Vanguard is kind of in this position where it's like, it didn't need much work, but the work that Bungie is intending on bringing to the game, or at least to this mode, is not something that I'm very excited about. Who knows, there might be some things that may come later on, but as of right now, all I'm seeing is, yeah, we're gonna just recycle some features from other game modes that we've done in the past and other seasonal events, because that's what we're going to do, and you can't really do anything about it. Which, you know, again, I have my qualms about that. Now, I hate the fact of Gambit, because Gambit essentially just got the biggest middle finger out of everyone in this situation. Essentially, they literally said that they're not going to make any adjustments. They're not going to dedicate any more resources to significantly transform Gambit, even though the one thing that they did is they tried to do an overhaul with Gambit, and they just essentially butchered it to where it killed the entire aspect of Gambit. I mean, no one liked the whole rework where there's just like a specific, like, oh, you have to do it in this amount of time, or you have to hit like this amount at this point for you to proceed. And I hate that so much. That's actually one of the main reasons why I haven't played it that often. And the problem is that with the fact that they're essentially just saying, yeah, we know we fucked up, but we're not going to really do anything about it, that also kind of just sends a final nail in the coffin, because the only thing that they're really doing is, one, they're bringing back a new city, like a new map. Finally, we're getting a new map. But again, this is something that is back in the original game of Cathedral of Scars. And then also they're going to be adding in Shadow Legion and Lucent Hive enemy types. But again, that is not something that is really positive, especially when you were saying in the first part of it, yeah, we're not going to have any more resources being used towards Gambit, because it's going to take away from the more popular parts of the game to show her up, blah, blah, blah. AKA, we are too lazy to really rework Gambit because we already fucked up, and we're just going to lie where we sleep on that. And the one thing is that they even kind of confirmed that they don't really care about Gambit that much, is the fact that they are making it completely optional. Like I said before, instead of having like, oh, you have to play Gambit for 3 matches, and for Crucible 3 matches, 3 strikes, etc., etc., they make it so that you can do 9 matches or 9 activities of any of the ritual playlists. They're also reducing the number of weekly challenges that they would get for the actual situation. And I don't like that. I really don't, because again, it is essentially you telling us that you don't care for the actual procedures and for the actual stuff for Gambit. And it sucks, because I thought Gambit was really fun. Gambit Prime was amazing. But of course, they had to cut that out. They also had to cut down on Gambit itself, bringing it into this weird homologation mess that ultimately became an abomination rather than anything else. But overall, I'm not super happy with how Gambit's being held, how Vanguard's being, dealt with. The only thing that I can really say that's positive is Crucible. But even then, when it comes to those type of situations, a single map and nothing else doesn't bode so much. But again, I guess, beggars can't be choosers. At least we're getting a new map. Now, I think obviously the last thing that we kind of want to talk about for the ritual activities is the armor set rewards. They're kind of walking back on what they said beforehand. They are not going to be having a new ritual armor set. So there isn't going to be a new one for this year, which is kind of something that I really, really kind of wish that they did not say anything about. And the main reason is that I'm not saying, oh, they shouldn't have addressed it here. I'm glad they addressed it. The only thing is that they shouldn't have promised it in the first place. If you feel like it is going to take more resources, aka you are too lazy to move away from this whole situation of, yeah, we want to give an annual refresh of the armor pieces, then you shouldn't have done that in the first place. Now, of course, obviously, that is for the ritual stuff. They are making sure that within trials, you are going to be getting a new armor set, so it's not like they're just completely getting rid of it. But it's still the fact of only trials is really getting this annual refresh treatment, while Vanguard, Crucible, and Gambit are just being shafted, for an entire year on that. And it's not something that we would want to see, because ultimately, when it comes down to it, we want to see the promises that are made are promises that are held, not just said for whatever reason and then no response to it whatsoever. I don't like the fact that they're kind of doing this. And I think overall, as much as I would want to give benefit for the ritual activities, I am not in the happiest of moods unless you focus exclusively on Crucible. Because again, they are making some good strides towards that in game modes, something that has been lacking within the development for a while. Now, moving away from the ritual activities, we're going to be focusing on other stuff. We're going to be talking about the game stability and game security. I think this is really good. I'm glad that they added this in, because obviously that is a huge aspect of what is causing a lot of negative impact on players when it comes to the game. Obviously, when it comes to the security, making sure that anti-cheat is being at its top point, which is what we always wanted. We're not against that. And I think the fact is that we're actually getting some information in regards to the game's anti-cheat and how they're processing that information and kind of going through the monitoring of that is great. And I'm glad that they provided that. I think this is something that was what we needed, because ultimately when it comes down to it, the fact that we are learning about how the anti-cheat is and kind of getting some more understanding for that. I mean, obviously, if you follow Destiny, you already kind of know the other aspect that they talk about, which is just going after the cheat companies legally through court, trying to sue them and shut them down. So there is some things like that. Now, obviously, not everything is kosher. You do have to worry about the actual issues of false positive banning, which has happened recently. I mean, you've heard it from a lot of speedrunners within the last few weeks, talking about how those type of situations are causing a bit of a negative impact when, it is still kind of something that we want. So we're in that, again, that double-edged sword where it's like, it's great we're getting this information, but also, we are still seeing false positives being hit for no reason, and it doesn't give that much of an idea of like what's going on with that. But again, the fact that they're even talking about this, I think, is still a huge plus. So I do appreciate the fact that they are talking about it. But I think when it comes to this type of stuff, I just really, really hope that we get a little bit more of an understanding later on, and this be something more discussed when it comes to the game's health and the game's situation. Now, obviously, moving away from the security aspect of the anti-cheat, back to stability. Obviously, what happened, back in Season 21, where there was a lot of bugs, there was a lot of weird glitches that were going on and causing people to either crash, not being able, get forced out of games, as well as processing, having huge long downtimes. And I think when it came down to it, obviously we had that massive blog post in the past about the stability issues that were plaguing the game at the point. And so I'm not surprised that they didn't really add anything in it, other than that they have essentially added more monitoring software, more monitoring systems to make sure that they can proactively take advantage of those systems to prevent those from actually becoming issues. Because they did highlight actually one aspect where there was an issue that caused members to have a problem, but players to have a problem of logging in. However, they were able to get that taken care of before that actually became a problem, which is nice. And I'm glad that we're seeing some sort of situation of how this is working. I'm hoping that it stays this way, where they're able to kind of go through this process. I mean, they are doing some internal chaos testing that they say when it comes to Season 22 launch, and they already are trying to make sure that everything is up to date and there isn't going to be any issues on launch. But again, it is still one of those things where you have to be pretty apprehensive compared to how everything was. Because when it comes to this type of situation, it is something to be an issue. Because again, they're trying to make sure that they have over 50 services that they have to, make sure work together to prevent any issues for Destiny 2 to actually run coherently and cleanly. So I'm hoping that when we get to that situation, because as of right now, they are going to be focusing more on detecting and fixing current stability issues, but we're going to have to wait an entire season to make sure that we can kind of see things happen beforehand. So I think that's going to be something that will be a little bit of a long-term, expectation type deal, which is fine. But again, I think this is something that really comes into play. Overall, I would say that I'm pretty neutral when it comes to the stability and the security. Like I said before, I was very positive on the fact that they actually provided some understanding for the anti-cheat and kind of some insight on that. But ultimately, when it comes to that, we're also still getting the whole information of, we're going to focus on stabilizing the game, and then we're going to focus on fixing the game and preventing those issues from happening later on when it comes to stability. So I'm kind of mixed on that. I'm not that big of a fan of it, but it is what it is when it comes down to that. Now, obviously, when it comes to the seasonal structure for the game, something that we have been experiencing since Shadowkeep, since this is kind of their new formula. And if you haven't seen my previous video of the state of the game that I've said back in Season of the Plunder, which was actually about almost a year ago at this point, do check that out. It kind of gives you some insight on how I felt about it at that point, where it's just like this generic formula that is not really changing much, and it's just doing do activity B, speak with person A, do activity C, and then go back to person A, and then rinse and repeat while dealing with the ritual stuff, which is fine. But it's also still the fact of I'm not too happy about it. But I think the one thing is that they did mention that they wanted to make the seasons feel unique, and the fact is, and I think they did a fairly decent job, so to speak, when it comes to that for this season, for Season of the Deep. However, I hope that they keep it somewhat unique throughout the rest of the time for the Light and Dark Saga. Because obviously, saying that you did it once and have made it unique doesn't really bode well if it's only going to be a one-time thing and then we just go back to the same model. I don't want to see that. I never want to see that. I think that's just a waste of time. Now, they did talk about all that stuff. I think, beforehand, I think everything was kind of pretty straightforward with the ritual activities. I think one thing that I didn't touch on yet is the fact that they have it where you have to be, it's like, oh, here's an exotic engram for that. But again, hopefully that they are adjusting that so that you would still be able to get those pinnacle rewards instead of just getting an exotic engram, because those type of situations can occur. But again, like I said before, we are going to be seeing what will be happening in the future now of what to come. So they did actually pretty much provide a lot of quality of life upgrades. Some of them were pretty good, others were pretty useless in my opinion. Like, it's nice, but I'm not going to really feel the benefit for it. So obviously one that I will feel the benefit for is quality of favoriting my shaders. The fact that I can favorite shaders now in season 22 will be awesome, because personally I think that would be really nice, as well as being able to favorite, ornaments and, emotes. It's going to be great. The thing is that if you see the way that I normally keep my character, it doesn't really change that much. So I don't mind it having 100, but I can guarantee you that if there's a lot of people like me who will like stick with one look and that's it, it's not going to really be utilized that much. I think it's amusing that they have added in emotes into that list, because it's like, one, you have 4 emotes to use. If you can make it so that I can use more emotes, then I feel like that would be more of a beneficial thing. But again, it's not something that I feel like is such a big thing. I just find this very interesting when it comes to that. Like, I like the fact that they're doing the favorite system. Like, that's great, don't get me wrong. But I feel like there's a couple of parts that they could have looked at a little bit better. Now, obviously, if you have not gotten the stasis aspects or fragments, if you have, if you do own Beyond Light and completed the Beyond Light campaign, you can now actually just buy them, which is great. If you are a new player, meaning that you've just recently finished the campaign, you hated doing the perks, like for, gain each of the aspects. The problem is that that's not going to be something that I'll be seeing. Main reason why is because I already have all the aspects. I think maybe on my other characters I might not have it, but I think I still do, because I did finish all of those before Lightfall. So it doesn't make sense when it comes down to that, because if you are a new player, great, it makes it a lot easier, and that's awesome. Or if you just hated the whole system, guess what? You can still grab everything. That's great to hear. But when it comes down to it, to the veteran players, it doesn't really benefit them at all. I think that's something that kind of is a mixed bag. Again, like I said before, it's good, but not for everyone. It's still something that's a bit issue. Now, transmats being unlockable. Why does this matter? Like, I'm sorry. Yeah, Bastion's the endgame. No one cares about transmats. Like, I'm sorry, no one really cares about transmat. Like, it's great that it's unlockable instead of like you having to pull it out of your collection and apply it. That's great. But it's still just the fact of like, this literally makes no sense to be something that's worth bringing up. Like, you can toss this in like a today in Destiny or something like that, or this week in Destiny. Like, I get it. I get it. Again, fashion is pure endgame, and you want to make sure that your ship also looks good as your getup. But again, I find this like really, really useless to bring up. I feel like could have been some other stuff that could have been done, but again, that is what it is for that. Wish Ender Pursuit improvements. The Wish Ender quest has gone through some changes. Now it's just a regular quest, and you won't have to worry about those discs. Overall, I think this is actually a positive situation, but again, I've had Wish Ender since Forsaken. It doesn't really impact me. This is going to be more towards the new lights, the more, everyone who's come in post Shadowkeep, or even better yet, post Beyond Light and Beyond, and Witch Queen. Those are going to get the most benefit out of this. For us as veteran players, since we've been playing since day one, we already had it. We went through the suffering and got it well. So that's not a huge thing for me. I'm not too concerned about this. Like, that's great. It's awesome, but it was whatever. Resources tab add to collections. This is a change we're really excited about. Really? You were excited about this? I don't know, man. I don't know if you should be. But, you know, there are some positives to this, I'll say. There's just some positives. You get all the currencies, upgrade materials, and engrams in the game, appropriately categorized, and with information on how to acquire it. So, if you are a new light or you somebody who does not use those systems before and are looking to start to utilize them, you will be able to get a nice comprehensive guide on that, which is great. I think that is still overall not a bad way to introduce these nice benefits for, you know, guiding new lights and guiding younger players to these systems. It is something, you know, that is great. Again, you know, I'm trying to look at this as the big picture. This is not a negative aspect. It's just that for me, I'm not going to see myself utilizing this because, again, I already know where everything is, what I need to do, and where I need to get it. This isn't going to be helpful as much as people will say. But I think this is still a good thing to have just as something there. Now, obviously, we're going to have Iron Banner challenges split, so one's going to be focusing, instead of it both having the same aspect of working on your rank as well as your subclass. What you'll be doing is that they're going to be swapping, they're going to be splitting it. It's going to have two different challenges, one for reputation multiplier, and the other one is going to be for pinnacle reward. Again, they are going to be stacking challenges, meaning that the longer you don't do them, the more challenges you'll have to do if you go at it all at once. How many challenges? I'm assuming it's going to be the 4 like we had before, but again, it is what I'm kind of going off of. I'm not too against it. I think it's really good that you don't limit us to a specific subclass. I never really liked that aspect of it. Because even though it's like, oh yeah, you have a lot of good combative stuff and you kind of mix it up, I like using my golden gun, and I don't want to move away from golden gun when I'm when I want to rank up my, you know, my Iron Banner stuff, especially since there's no power limit difference anymore, and so I shouldn't have to be kind of focused in on that. Just like how in Crucible I don't get any issues or any constraints of using whatever subclass. Same thing with Gambit. And I think that the fact that they're actually adding that in for the regular, like the ritual type multiplier of increasing your rank, I'm glad they're doing that, but I mean, it's still one of those type of situations for it. Now, the last thing that they're saying when it comes to all the quality of life stuff is also immediate rank ups. So, way back in Season 3, the ritual rank ups would just be processed after you hit orbit, just because they decided to say, hey, we really want to make it super fucking obvious that you ranked up. And obviously that did cause a lot of issues. Now, they did move it back and revamp the system so that you will be able to kind of see it instead on the top. You'll see it on the bottom, which is great. I love that part. But they're now going to make sure that it is something that happens immediately rather than, okay, you're going to go up in orbit. And I think this is not bad. I think this is great because, one, it is something that is shown, but also this feels like a nothing burger when it comes to it. Because again, 90% of the time you're going to go into orbit, either because you're going to leave the activity or you're going to head out of, you know, you're going to queue up again. I guess they're trying to do, like, they're trying to revamp that or bring that back, which is great, but ultimately all you're doing is just moving the reward system or the actual progression system from when you're in orbit over to after the match. I don't see much of a difference in there because ultimately we're still going through the same damn thing. I think the quality of life updates are not too bad. I mean, again, like I said before, half of it's not for me, and that's fine, because again, they do have to accommodate for new lights and other players. But I just kind of wish that we had a little bit more that was more favorable to everyone, because ultimately, when it comes down to it, they want to make sure that they actually do care about the hardcore players and I feel like this part is somewhat lacking. But I mean, hey, if you're a new light or, you know, someone who doesn't play often, they're getting some pretty good stuff, so I'm not going to deny that. I think this part I would be neutral on. Because again, I'm not getting that much of a benefit, but the new lights and the younger players are. Alright, so the next part that they did go over is going to be the sandbox updates. They just kind of went over a couple of things, or quick and short. New strand aspects are coming, so, you know, Whirling Maelstrom for Hunter, Banner of War for Titans, and Weed Walk for Warlocks. We will get that information, you know, later on, closer to when the season gets launched, possibly within the showcase, we'll see. On top of that, they are reworking some more exotic armor pieces, especially since they did go through and kind of do those reworks for the first wave of this season. But, you know, again, we're going to be seeing the other stuff coming out. So, ultimately, on those, I'm pretty neutral on it. I do like the fact that the armor reworks are happening, because, again, we do have a lot of, like, shitty exotics at this point that haven't really matched up to the times. You know, there's certain parts of it where they're useless because your build can, you know, can do the exact same thing for those armor pieces. There's some places that are really good, and I think those should stay. But I think that's one thing that, you know, we'll have to see exactly what is being worked on specifically when it comes to those type of situations. They are going to be providing a developer insight article that's going to be going live next week regarding this. So if you are very concerned about this or curious about it, they are going to be providing some new information later on. Now, obviously, strand aspect, I'm kind of neutral on it. I don't normally like using strand. It is a very good subclass, don't get me wrong, but it's just the same thing with, you know, with how everything felt with it. It's, you know, I doubt I'm going to be using it that much. I still need to unlock it on my other characters, like the full thing, because I still don't have those. But, you know, who knows, maybe they'll set that up to be more like a vendor system like they did with the other aspects, but instead of using this weird strand crap where I'm forced to play with strand on a character that I don't normally play strand on, you'll be able to, you know, get it for like Glimmer or for Legendary Charge or whatever the fuck. Hopefully we get to that point, but I don't know. Now, beyond that, we do have apparently a new weapon subfamilies that are going to come through, meaning that we're going to get different frame bases for the weapons. It doesn't look like we're going to be getting anything like any new weapons like we have been recently with Witch Queen, with the glaives. And I think that is going to be somewhat of a nice thing when it comes down to it. Because again, glaives are in this point where they're very niche. Like, they're really good in GM Nightfalls, but outside of that, it's just like, if they're there, they're interchangeable, which is fine. But I definitely think that, you know, them adding in more weapon subfamilies is definitely going to help a lot more compared to adding in just like an entirely new weapon itself. So I think this is going to be a good thing, but again, we'll have to see what's happening because they are going to discuss this a little bit more in the showcase. So again, I'm not going to really put much of an emphasis on this just because it's there just others. If you didn't catch our mid-season weapon tuning update, you may not know that we have substantial shakeup coming to weapon sandbox in season 22 in the form of decoupling damage, fallout, and range. We'll share more details in the upcoming weapon balance update article, but now the high-level goals are for the weapon tuning preview is to reduce the variance between the optimal engagement range for our mid-range weapons. We almost said mid-range. We're going to do the mid-range, guys. Anyway, slightly reduce the average engagement range in Crucible by pulling the maximum damage fallout distance from their weapons. So essentially what they're going to be doing is that they're going to be kind of closing a little bit of that fall off range a little bit, just to kind of keep it a little bit more up close when it comes to that. There's going to be certain weapons that will have a higher impact than others, but when it comes to that, that's kind of how it works. You know, when it comes to those type of situations, the weapons themselves will still have unique archetypes when it comes to the fall off actually beginning. Now, obviously, they are going to be doing some hand tuning with exotics and special weapons because they do want to kind of keep them in the same position as they were while making sure that they do buff other aspects of it, which is fine. I mean, I think that's going to be something that will have to happen because obviously when it comes to those type of situations, it is an eventuality, especially when you are trying to add in new weapons, new stuff, and new items. It's always going to interact with each other, sometimes either constructively, sometimes, negatively. It's always hard to really determine when it comes down to it, so that's something that I'm not surprised about. Now, apparently there's going to have a lot of other things to look forward to. It's not a list, but they did notify us that we are going to be seeing a possibility of more usability of hand cannons within PvP. No, not PvP, my apologies, PvE. As well as getting some buffs to the sword, meaning that it doesn't need a specific amount of ammo to be usable for heavy attacks, and the sword guard is also being buffed. They will be working on some of the perks like Bipod, Envious Assassin, and Under Over. I am kind of neutral on this, primarily because one, I don't really care for Bipod. I feel like that one is just really overhyped. Hopefully they do make a good change for it that's worth me trying to go for the bipod on like rocket launchers, because as of right now I just find it a waste. Envious Assassin's not in a bad spot, I like it. Under Over, haven't really played with it that much. Hopefully it'll be something worth going for, but I think the most important part about it is going to be the hand cannons being more viable in PvE, because let's be real, it is something that is really missing a lot when it comes down to it. That's my highlight. That's the best part, in my opinion, out of that. So the last thing that they did highlight is going to be reinforcing our goals for the year. This is essentially their 4 main goals that they did bring up about 6 months ago when it came down to it. Primarily, it's going to be expanding the players' imaginations, also bringing back challenge to Destiny, enriching the content, as well as connecting our guardians. So obviously when it comes to that, they have been working with that, and I feel like in this part there are some aspects that are really good about it, but then also there's some aspects where I'm kind of like iffy on it. So expanding the players' imaginations. In Lightfall and Season of Defiance, we've transformed many of the ways players currently interact with the game, from core systems and build crafting overhauls to streaming seasonal currencies. With Season of the Deep, we've replaced the typical vendor upgrade model and introduced the new Deep Dives activity and Pressure Trials, which represent fresh experiments for Destiny 2 that we believe are worth the investment. While there are always room for us to revise and improve, the community's response has reinforced that we're on the right track for norm-breaking efforts like these, and we'll be rolling out something very new and different in Season 23. See, the problem is that when it comes down to those type of situations, is that I'm glad that they did something like this for now, but I think the one problem is that they're saying that, oh, we're going to be changing it up in Season 23. I was kind of hoping that when they took into this account, it was something that they realized ahead of time and they worked on that starting from Lightfall. Like, don't get me wrong, Season of Defiance wasn't too bad. I'm not really gonna say it was negatively received. In my opinion, I think it was somewhat decent. But again, unlike, when it comes down to the actual stuff that we did in Season of Defiance, I think the Trials is possibly a much better step up compared to what we had last time, because these Trials actually do have some progressive difficulty involved in grinding it that does provide more reward. So I think that's really good. I think that's to be something that they should focus on. My issue is, and this is kind of me giving a little bit more headache for it for no reason. I don't like the fact that they're going to be essentially sticking with this sort of situation for 2 seasons in a row. I know I am a stickler for that. Like, granted, if it is going to be the same type of difficulty situation, I'm fine with that. I'm okay with it. But again, when it comes down to it, if you're going to be saying like, oh yeah, we'll be rolling out something very new and different in Season 23, that means that we're going to have to expect the same thing in Season 22, which is hit or miss for me. Because it's like, depending on what happens, it's like we're using the pressure trials as a baseline, and then whatever is going to be coming up in Season 22, which they'll be talking about in the showcase, is going to be very interesting for that. So obviously they don't want to spoil anything ahead of the showcase, but they will be heading into creative territories for Season 22 that haven't been explored before. They're changing some things up in a big way, including seasonal progression paradigm and an all-new mechanic. So I think that is just their way to cover that basis. Like, yeah, our activity system is going to be the same, but because we're going to be changing something different. So again, one of those things where it could be a hit or miss. I'm thinking this will be more of a hit, but again, it is what it is when it comes down to it. We'll just have to kind of see what happens after. Now, when it comes to the narrative aspect of it, they were very laser focused on ensuring the connective tissue in the storytelling between Seasons 21 all the way till Season 23. And the final shape is more impactful than last year's seasons for leading up to Lightfall. So I think the one thing when it comes down to that stuff, currently, if we look at all the stuff here, it's kind of a mixed bag in my opinion. It's primarily on the way that they delivered the information. Like, don't get me wrong, I do like the fact that they are making it more interconnected than the previous seasons that we had in the previous expansions, where they're all kind of like their self-contained stories with little to no relevance to either the future or the past situations, with maybe some adjustments here and there. But I like the fact that it is going to be more intertwined. My main issue is that they need to be more upfront with it, meaning that they need to actually provide more insight in regards to that situation. Like, for example, the veil containment, people thought it was a one and done, when in reality, every single day or every single week, you get a new audio log. So it gives you more of a reason to go back, but they don't exemplify that. They don't say anything about it. They don't give you a notice of it. It's just the first week that you get the notice of it, the first time you do it, and then after that, nothing else. And I think that's something that really will have a negative impact on that. I do want them to make sure that they do, when they do this whole interconnectivity between different storylines and how it works within the underlying storyline of Lightfall, that they do bring attention to it. They need to bring attention to it because, again, the information that we're getting from Veil Containment is very important, and it does work with the actual main Lightfall campaign storyline. But the problem is that if you do not know that it exists, guess what? You're missing out. That being said, in the actual cutscenes that we had when it came down to the actual, Season of the Deep, where we got the Witness's origins, I feel like, yes, that's a good spot to put it, but also that's not the best location, because I feel like it should have been added in within the same season, hell, even within the actual storyline itself of the campaign, because that was something that I felt was lacking within the Lightfall campaign, of like the reason why the Witness wants to do what the Witness wants to do, what the origins of the Witness are, because we got that in Lightfall with everything else. And I think that's something that really, like, when it comes down to it, if we look at Witch Queen, they hit every single story beat very well. And I think if they brought that back, if they actually brought in and told us that origin story during the Lightfall campaign, I think a lot of people would be more happy about that when it comes down to that type of situation. Now, of course, they've already kind of talked about how they've, proven this with the revelations of the Witness's origins, the New Moon drops, and the implications of where the Guardians go from here after the final mission's cutscene. I'm not sure exactly if they're referring to the one at the end of the quest, or if this is going to be something that will be later down the line that will be available. I'm hoping that we do have a final mission. I really do. I think it would be really great to have a final mission. But again, it is up to what they decide for it, so let's kind of see what happens on that. Now, I like the fact, though, that Bungie already kind of recognizes what they're doing is different from what they normally have, because they know that there's some who have preferred the experiences of these stories during the Lightfall's campaign. Yes, I am one of those few. Now, with those players in mind, we believe the totality of this year's narratives will set the stage for the final shape in ways that a single story beat never could. And to put concerns to rest right now, the final shape in its raid will provide a climactic conclusion to the Light and Darkness saga before we look ahead of what comes next in Destiny 2. So that last sentence, the final shape and its raid will provide a climactic conclusion to the Light and Darkness saga before we look ahead to what comes next in Destiny 2. That is a very heavily weighted sentence that I think may be the make or break on the success for this game. Because I've talked to a lot of friends recently when it came down to these type of situations, and this is even before the state of the game. They are looking at the final shape being the final season that they are going to play. And it's not because, oh, the season, like, the story is really good, the experience, like, you know, everything is going well for it. It's because they've invested so much, and I mean, it's the same thing for me. I've invested so much of my time into this game that I want to see how this ends. And as much as they want to be, like, against the whole over-deliverance, the whole, like, you know, we don't want to just, like, set up this expectation at this point due to Forsaken, I think in this case, they need to hit that point. They need to hit the point of over-delivering, because as of right now, we're seeing this stuff and we're not even seeing if they're delivering at the level that we were hoping for. I think if they want to make a climactic conclusion, you need to send it off with a bang. A big shaboom, chaos everywhere, something that's worth going at. Because ultimately, if you are doing an ending to a Light and Dark saga that started back in 2014 and ending 10 years later, you need to make sure that it is a big bang. I mean, we're not asking for, like, Fast and the Furious type, like, family, all this and just random bullshit. But we want to have it where all our work, all the effort, all the time that we put into this game led up to something that we can say, yeah, that's how you end this. That's how you end the saga. That's how you end the 10 years. That's how you end that dynasty. Because again, when it comes down to it, like I said before, people are going to play until final shape, and at that point, it's up in the air. For me, final shape needs to hit that point where I feel like I can be confident back in Bungie again. Because when it comes down to it, they have to do so. They have done it before. They have done it a couple of times before. So I'm hoping, and I'm really, really hoping that it happens again. I really do. But, you know, that is something that I'm hoping, more like coping with, but who knows. Again, like I said before, the final shape is the make or break, and that last sentence is also going to be a lot heavier than what it is. Now, obviously, that is the first aspect that they wanted to talk about. The second part is bringing back challenge to Destiny. So obviously, they made the whole level scaling, so you're always going to be 15 under when you're at in Neomuna, which I find is great. I think this is really nice. And the fact that they have not included any, you know, scaling up of, you know, the power level. No power level increase that occurred in this season, I think is amazing, because one, it removes any sort of stress put on trying to go through with that process, which is great. I love it. Now, with that being said, they're going to continue that situation, meaning that there's not going to be raising the power level cap in Season 22. All I can hope is that they do it for Season 23 as well. We'll have to hope. Like, it's just, I'm hoping. Because they were very happy, you know, we were very happy about that. I was super ecstatic about it, because it's like, yeah, we don't have to, you know, we don't have to, like, focus down every single week to get pinnacles, because guess what? We already hit max level. We don't have to do that anymore. We don't have to worry about it. And I think it also will help a lot of new lights, because again, when it comes to those type of situations, the way that they get pinnacles is going to be a lot different from the way that we get pinnacles, because again, they are limited to the amount of content that they have. So I think the fact that they are they have not raised the power level cap is a very good thing. Now, of course, with that being said, they're still going to have plenty of activities where power is crucial. So, of course, it's not going to just make everything super easy. There's still going to be a challenge involved. Now, what will happen is that they are adding in they did decide to add in the Nightfall difficulty for the Grandmaster for the first Psyops Battlegrounds. Like, I tried it out. My God, it is nuts on how this is going to be. Now, they're not going to make any changes. Obviously, they're going to continue to monitor the feedback as they do add more Battlegrounds to the Vanguard Nightfall and Grandmaster schedule later in the year. But it's still just the fact of like, hey, we are doing this because we want to make sure that we're actually like okay with this, and this is something that we can go with. Now, their last part for that, like, here's the one thing when it comes to that, I like the fact that they're doing the challenges stuff. The challenging stuff is great. I think Neomuna should stay the way it is. I think the caps that they've put in, the power level caps, the power level structure, work the same way as it always does. And I think the one thing is that they're going to be making more like artifact power and more of a focus, which is fine in my opinion, but you know, again, it does have its own negative impacts. But I still think that overall, I think this is still a very good thing. I do like the way that they made these changes, and I think they should really maintain this up until season 23 before the final shape, because again, obviously, I have no problem doing a yearly power grind. Now, enriching the content. Based on the feedback through the year of Witch Queen, we knew that players wanted more exotic missions than the community would need to discover on their own. Yes, and you've already shown that you've responded, because in Defiance, we've gotten the Avalon exotic mission, which is fun which is super fun. I love it. Even better, we got the Wicked Implement Scout Rifle exotic, which is great that you can access the deep dives. I love that a lot. I think that's really good. I think it's amazing when we get those type of things. Now, obviously, that is not the only thing that they're going to be doing. They are going to be bringing back Presage, which is the exotic mission for DMT, or Dead Man's Tale. And instead of it being offered by Xur, they're going to now have it be a craftable weapon. Now, obviously, they're going to be adding in other situations, like other quest lines. So the Vox Obscura for the grenade launcher and Seraph Shield for the pulse rifle. Those are going to be added in later on, which is great, because again, they are going to be kind of working on that, which will be very fun. Now, they are going to explain more about the exotic rotator situation in an upcoming This Week in Destiny blog, as they get closer to the launch of them. Now, obviously, they have, they are delivering a lot of new content with the ritual stuff, like they have gone through. They just recap what happens in the PvP, new game modes, new map, new emblem, new armor set for trials, as well as returning weapons and other aspects of that. They did wanted to do some more changes to that, so they are kind of adding in something for Pathfinder. They actually do provide some of a UI look to it that will be coming in the final season of the year, or at least that's what they'll try and do. But they wanted to make sure that this can be done, so they're going to actually have that be pushed even further back into the final shape, which is fine, because apparently this is supposed to replace some of the bounties with a more rewarding and engaging system, which, I'm fine with. I don't like just having to do let me just do bounties and bounties and bounties and bounties. Like I don't need to do that, dude. I don't like doing that. I hate that. It's just dumb. It's stupid. Now, with that, I'm glad to see that they're making those adjustments. I think it's going to be something that really does help. Now, obviously, the last thing that they wanted to do is connecting the Guardians. The gameplay system and quality of life features that we've added made it more welcoming than ever been with new and returning players, which is great. And they're doubling down when it comes down to the final shape. Now, obviously, they are experiencing when it comes to like experimenting on those type of different situations. They are going to be making a fire team finder system in place in the game, so that you would be able to, if you don't have a team, you'll be able to run like raids, dungeons, mass level activities, and more if you're on your own, which is great. I think that's a really nice thing that they're doing, that they're kind of integrating that into it. Granted, as someone who's been part of like LFGT groups for, in different discords for 6-7 years at this point, it's not going to have that much of an impact, but I think it's good that they're actually providing some incentive for other people, even if they don't utilize those, to still take advantage of those benefits. So I think that's a really good thing that they're doing in regards to that. Now, outside of that part, they are looking to make sure that they can make more changes to the progression system to connect even more players and remove barriers from keeping friends from taking on the same content together. And so again, they'll be talking more about that in the showcase. Now, obviously, there's a lot of stuff that was talked about within this. And, when it comes down to it, I think it's time for me to provide my own post review of this, because obviously, when it came down to making this, kind of talking about this is all just kind of ad-lib. This is something that is just coming off the rip. This is not something that I have like, I've reviewed and all that. But I'll break down and kind of give you my response to everything for this. In a sort, I think the fact is that I am hopeful but not confident with the state of the game. And the main reason is that even though we did receive a lot of decent things and a lot of highlights when it came down to it, there's still a lot of stuff that was kind of tossed aside and is using the excuse of not enough resources. Like, for example, my main thing that I hate the most about this is the fact that they essentially just said, we don't care for Gambit, we're going to add a couple of things, and just, there we go, it is now seen as abandonware, and that's going to be it. I don't like that, because again, Gambit was very good before the rework, but now when they did the rework, they essentially killed a lot of the enticement, a lot of the fan, enjoyment out of that. And the fact is that they're like, yeah, we kind of see that it doesn't have that much, so we're just going to say screw it, and we're not going to care. I hate that. I think that is ridiculous. I think that is a waste of resources just on the fact of you doing this. If you didn't, I feel like you shouldn't have even added Gambit into this type of situation because of those type of issues that you're doing. Like, when your rework does not work, revert back to what you had before if you can. Honestly, like, it's great that we're getting a new map. Awesome. We needed a new map, but the thing is that this is just a revamp of an old map that was there in the game. Great. Awesome. I'm glad that they decided to become more part of that recycling initiative and reusing game modes for that. Now, another thing that I did have another issue with is the fact within the Vanguard, they're saying that there's going to be new additions that are coming up, but the first thing that they highlight is something that is seen as potentially recycled content, which I believe is recycled content. Medals do not have that much of an impact overall. I think that this is just a way to cover up the lips, to use lipstick on a pig when it comes down to the situation. Like, look, I'll be hopeful when it comes to new additions, but if you're highlighting something that a lot of players who have played Guardian games have seen, the thing that you're highlighting right now does not bode well for what we're going to be receiving later on. The fact is that we're essentially going to be getting a feature that has been already used in the past for seasonal events and making it more accustomed to regular Nightfall's grinding does not make it look good for anything else. I am not a fan of that. I think that is very, very, lazy when it comes to it. And again, when it comes to this type of situation, they're saying, oh, the Vanguard playlists are in a solid place with healthy population. Yeah, but I feel like that should not be the excuse to just essentially toss in recycled materials thinking that, oh yeah, we make it new because it's something that isn't inherently involved, even though we've seen it in action being involved due to the event. I think the other thing is that them making adjustments to the ritual weapon system, the ritual update, you know, adding in new weapons like, you know, a stasis submachine gun in Crucible, a solar sniper rifle in Strikes, a void machine gun in Gambit, and then, you know, a strand grenade launcher in Trials of Osiris, as well as kind of upgrading a lot of the other stuff when it comes down to it, and reintroducing some weapons is great. But again, it's one of those things where I feel like it's just more of the same stuff that we're having right now. I don't think that this is something that we would want to keep with. I don't think this is something that we should keep with. Now, obviously, that being said, I'm not going to downplay what we got for PvP. I think PvP did definitely need a lot of the stuff that they're bringing in, and I'm very happy about it. I think that is a very good aspect of this when it comes down to it. But again, you know, the fact is that out of everything, PvP is the only, like, you know, Crucible, Trials are the only things that are really getting anything. And again, when we really look at it, we're getting only one new map. And then they're going to be bringing in an old map, you know, later on in the next season. So again, we're only getting this one new thing, and then, you know, outside of that, new weapons, and then we're going to get recycled content again. Not a huge fan of that. They are going to be making adjustments to the competitive edge, meaning that there's going to be a new weapon that's going to be coming out as a competitive division weapon, meaning that, you know, the sniper rifle that you can get will be changing to a aggressive frame pulse rifle, which is kind of nice. But again, that's going to be doing that in season 23. So I think the one thing is that when it comes to this, the ritual stuff, I don't want to sound negative or being negative, but the problem is that all the positive stuff that I'm seeing is only really focused in one area, and the rest of it is just still being offset by all the negativity, like the fact of lack of support for Gambit, recycled content for Vanguard, and then also, you know, intention of recycling more content for PvP, like bringing back Citadel from 2018, a map that was in the game 5 years ago, but likely got DCV'd because maybe there's some coding thing, whatever. Not only that, but they're also making it much easier for you to focus away from Gambit, essentially possibly just putting in the final nail in the coffin for the game mode itself. Now, armor set rewards, like I said before, if you are going to make a promise, deliver on that promise. Do not just leave it out there for us to be, you know, portrayed about. I don't like that. I think that is just very ridiculous. I think that is very stupid. That being said, you know, there are some I don't want to be super negative about everything. Again, the fact that we're getting some more insight in regards to the game security, the stability, I think that's really nice. I think that, you know, we are getting a better of an understanding, but I feel like when it comes to this type of situation, I don't know how to really say that properly. And then obviously they're making adjustments to the seasonal structure, which, yeah, we do want to see more adjustments to that, because again, the same formulaic bullshit is not going to fly for long. It gets very boring. I mean, hell, you're going to be seeing much lower, you know, player counts within the next few seasons if it still maintains this. So the fact that there is going to be some adjustments in season 22 as well as in season 23, I'll be fine with that. Quality of life stuff. Again, half of this is great. Half of this is only worth it if you are a new player. If you care for endgame cosmetics, you're going to get some benefits from that fairly well. If you haven't gone through and gotten all the aspects from Stasis because, you know, you thought the grind was terrible, congrats, they fucking made that as a shortcut now. You know, unlockables for Transmat, it's whatever. I don't really care for it. I think it's just a really unnecessary highlight. You could have tossed this in This Week in Destiny, in my opinion. I would have been fine with it. Not really worth putting into the actual state of the game. and obviously making updates to the Wish Ender Pursuit and the resource tabs. Again, something that's not going to be relevant for me, but going to be relevant for new lights as well as other players. Now, we will have to see exactly what's going to happen within the actual sandbox updates, because again, they are going to be talking more about that later on. But, you know, there are some stuff that is potentially beneficial, but others that may not be the best thing. But again, we just need to see what the showcase will provide and how everything will kind of line up for that. Now, reinforcing the goals, I feel like in this case, I don't know. I mean, it's great that they were able to pat themselves on the back for being able to actually meet their goals, or at least kind of work with their goals. But, I mean, again, ultimately, when it comes to that, there's still some things that need to be improved on, like the fact that there's still some aspects of the normal seasonal model that are still there. You know, like I said before, talk to person A, do activity B, then do activity C, and then talk back to person A to get more information. That's how you do it. That's the formula, and it gets really repetitive. The challenge-wise, I think it's really good that they did it, and the fact that they aren't raising that power level cap is great. I think that's awesome. I think that's a personal win on that one. But, you know, adding in Battlegrounds into the Vanguard, Nightfall, and Grandmaster rotation isn't something that I'm a fan of, because again, recycling content, that's what we're doing again. Not a huge fan of that. I'm really not. Because again, I want to see more strikes. I want to see more things for that. Because ultimately, yeah, they may have their resources quote unquote grown thin. And I don't think it's I don't. But it's like, you know, make sure that you actually are properly putting in the actual resources. Because overall, I'm going to be completely honest. When they use the excuse of, oh, this will take away resources from other aspects that are more focused, you might as well just say, we don't want to spend any more money on that aspect. And this is also coming from a game developing company that was valued at $3.6 billion by Sony and went through with the purchase. This is also a game that also got an influx of funds to maintain their staff and possibly even to expand it. So I feel like when we really look at this type of situation, it's showing that they're not focusing that much on Destiny 2 anymore. And it looks like a lot of it is now being focused more on Marathon. And I think that's a good thing and also a bad thing when it comes down to it, because yeah, Marathon is going to be essentially like their new IP, so they should have a little bit more development on that. But again, your main moneymaker right now is also Destiny 2. You are coming up on potentially a final make or break moment within the saga of Light and Dark. I honestly wish that you would put more effort into the actual information on this one, more impact on, you know, making the adjustments that are necessary. And again, I'll give them a benefit of a doubt. I'm not a coder. I'm not a developer. I'm not someone who is going to be saying, oh, just revamp your engine and make everything good. I'm not going to say that. But I am still going to criticize, you know, some aspects of it, like making a lot of the content that we're getting just reused assets from previous seasons or from previous events. I don't like that when it comes down to it. If I wanted to have that recycled stuff, I would have been doing those events, and even now I'm not doing those events. And so I think the one thing is that they need to make sure that they can get a better understanding of what to do when it comes to these type of situations, because if they don't, it is likely that there's going to still be a lot of negative issues that are going to hinder the progress and the potential of this. Now again, I'm going to keep an open mind. I'm going to be very hopeful when it comes to this. But as of right now, I am not super confident in the state of the game right now. Because again, when it comes to everything, it is not something that is going to be, whole improvement. Obviously, that's not going to happen. But again, I do want to at least see something in the right direction. But with that being said, thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed. I mean, we've been speaking for over an hour at this point. I think almost 10, like hour, 10 minutes. So a lot of stuff to talk about. But if you do want to see more stuff from me, do hit the subscribe button as well as check out the main channel. Because again, even though you are seeing some reviews here, the main channel does also have the Let's Plays. So obviously videos for Destiny 2 are going to be still going up. Because again, I do want to see the end of the final shape. However, as of right now, I am very hesitant on saying if this is going to bode well in my perspective. Because again, a lot of the stuff that they're bringing back is primarily recycled content. And I think when it comes down to it, they have enough influx of cash from Eververse, from everything else, to actually put towards a decent amount of effort into it. So I am hoping, and greatly hoping, that this actually does become well. Now again, enough waffling on that. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.